What a fun start. Well, welcome along to Green Drinks, another remote one. Yeah, this topic of what apps are coming up and what is available for people to actually use to monitor biodiversity came out of the idea of using iNaturalist and how that was being sharing and identifying species but within groups, and how do you then use other apps and generate other ideas there. I'm guessing everyone can hear me okay. If any problems at any stage, just type into the group chat. So let's get into the next couple of slides. So I'm going to run through a little bit about what I learned with TrailWatch app, and also I'll have a little look at the iNaturalist briefly, some other web resources about both online photographs and also property searching, things like that. So how many of you have actually used the TrailWatch app? You can type that in the chat, if you've used it at all. It's a Hong Kong based app that allows you to record walks and also plan walks. And you can take photos along the way, and the end results is that you get some interesting recordings of where you've been. You have to use the Photos app take photos within the app itself, and then they get geotagged to the locations. So the idea is like, well, over time, if these TrailWatch apps have all these different photos of the landscape, how can we actually use them for the changes over time? And considering that the TrailWatch app has basically been collecting data now for 5 years, it's interesting to see here, because this is the first observation that I could find online, which is saying back in 2015. And while not all the photos are going to help us, it would be interesting to understand how we could sort them or do things differently. And so that is it's funded or supported through funding of the Wing Foundation. And so very much an interesting Hong Kong app that is going on. I've started it using as a backup for when I'm doing walks myself, not so much for the photos, but it also has a nice profiles of elevations and that afterwards. And it does have a planning function to find routes. And it links up different tracks and gives you an estimate of how long it might take to walk them. So it's not based on by trail only. Okay, so that's TrailWatch app. One of the things that I find interesting or would like is to have a bit more of an option of using it there is, how could you find all the photos within a region? Or so like, if you just zoomed into a small part, what could you see as popping up for those photos? And what about within a certain date range? So if you're looking for something from 2 years ago in that region. Since I gave a presentation similar to this one to a group of sustainability people the other day, now being in contact with different folks who use the app, and it'll be interesting to see what we come up with to use it. Other one, iNaturalist. If you haven't used this, this is great. Basically, it's a global database. You use your smartphone to take a photo. These are just some of the observations that I've taken, and each of those pins is actually where the photo was taken, links back to what I've had. What's great about this is that as you go and identify something, so I took this photo of this bug, didn't have any other idea rather than bug when I started this, by uploaded that, and the software gives you some suggestions, and I thought, oh well, it might be this thing. So there's this, came up with this suggestion, and then 2 other people have said, no, we think this is the bamboo tiger longhorn. So it then has community agreement of what I've photographed or anyone's photographed, and then I can go back and change it, say, yep, I agree what these suggestions are. And that then becomes what they call a research grade observation. And the cool thing about this is they can also be put inside projects or different spatial regions. And that's where the City Nature Challenge works, and similar to like this one for the Hong Kong moths. So there's a group where all these different moths are being recorded, and because some of them are quite rare, they hide the locations only to the administrators of that group. So that way they can go in and still get the data about where things are, but it gets around the issue of having people go out and collect things. And this applies for whether it's moths, snakes, plants. So that's really quite a cool other feature that the app has. And like I mentioned, the City Nature Challenge, that's region specific, and then it makes the competition. Hong Kong has participated for the last couple of years. If any of you actually have participated in this or used City Nature Challenge, just put a little comment in the chat group so that I can actually see who's familiar with it. And what comes out of the cool thing is that you can have these competitions running, and it might be based on a school or that. What I love about this, the observations from Hong Kong have once again shown what most of us already know, is Hong Kong's got a really big range of biodiversity. And in this list, you can see that in terms of species, these were, I set this slide up before the actual final results came out. I think we actually came in third for species this year's. But you can see that Hong Kong knocked it off really well. We came in about 9th or something for the number of observations. So what's really cool is that you've got the ability of wherever people are in the world to use this app to check in. So it's by check-in, so you can follow people and then confirm their observations no matter where they are in the world. So I find that really quite a nice little app. Cool, seeing a couple of you have used City Nature Challenge in the chat there, and that's good as well. Right, next slide is going to be, actually I hid this slide, but actually as an interesting one for finding things or reporting things, there's a function within TrailWatch to report rubbish or litter. The 1823 app is another good one for reporting, let's say, incidents that you wonder if they're happening on private land or not. So just putting in I think this might be illegal dumping, or I think this might be illegal felling of trees. Then the government puts it through the right departments based on that, and it kind of helps check up on what people are doing. Okay, getting into some other websites now, moving away from apps. Key thing that I've mentioned here is that I only can read and speak English. So my looking at some of these apps has only been on the English version. Many of them have bilingual or trilingual. So do feel free to share other sites later on or in the chat group for what is actually coming up as interesting sites that you know of. So first one as a desktop app, the cool thing about Google Earth Pro, you can scroll through different years of photography and see changes over time. And that can show up some interesting different land use items. In this example that I've just shown here for Lantau, you know, the oldest imagery on parts of Lantau is 1979, right up to date now. So that's for the desktop version. I'm not sure if you can use that function online anyhow with Google Earth. If you know that, feel free to type that in the chat. Now, the other cool one that I discovered not so long ago was this one that shows Hong Kong's coastline over the years. You'll see in the bottom right-hand side, there's this scale of from 1840 right the way through with the different pink colors and the shades. So you can do the slider time scale both for certain periods of the time. And what we've got showing here is the reclamation that happened between 1842 and 1970. And you'll see that there's dark areas that are out on the water, particularly around the Chingy area and the container terminals and coming around to West Kowloon. But of course, all central, reclaimed and that. So that's an interesting slider to kind of show what's going on. And this app is also now starting to look around there on the right-hand side of Tsin Kwan O and doing some of the reclamations there. So it doesn't focus on the whole of Hong Kong, but it does in the Victoria Harbour area. And this is really interesting if you're talking to people and saying, oh, we've got to protect this or change this, reminding people how long has the land actually been there, and when have we actually destroyed the ocean, you might say, to make up that land. So it's an interesting one to refer to. A different way of looking at photographs, and that is in this site, which is quite interesting from the perspective that it shows you just photos in regions. So a lot of these cool old photos show the hillsides when it was barren and very few trees across Hong Kong. So you can zoom in and see the different photos. A lot more of it is about buildings and that, but still some interesting data in the background there from a landscape or a scenery perspective. And that's quite a useful one, say like for us looking at what's changed in the coastline in Gwulo and what buildings have come in that. I live in Gwulo and involved with Living Islands movement, so it's been a useful little project there to use. The other one is the government data, and Hong Kong government's done a lot of aerial mapping and over the years, and their oldest photography actually comes from 1924. And my background as a surveyor and having worked on control for aerial photography, these blue lines with dots show the flight path, and the little dot shows where they actually, the photo was taken directly above that location. You can buy this data and get it from the government online. It's not in a really easy format, but it would be really cool if there's a way of getting this government data online, and maybe in lower resolution, but going back to the Google Earth option of being able to do time sliders and see changes here. I don't know if there's a function within the government viewing of these. The current way it is you kind of have to click on the location the photo was taken, and then you get this pop-up saying, well, what was the flight date, and a little bit more info about it. Now moving on to the next one. I love this one, map.gov.hk, because in rural villages, it's often very hard to work out where number 42 in a certain village might be. And you can search by that, house addresses or lot addresses as well. They've recently, in probably the last 6 months, maybe it's a year, loaded up the layer of lot boundaries. So you can actually go on and search for a lot, but also tick on this show all lots. So what I've done in this example is taken gone up to the top of the peak tram and turned on it there. And you can see that basically inside any of the red boxes is there's some lease or some rights to use that land. So if you kind of look outside the red boxes, those dash boxes, then basically that's government land. And so you instantly can go, oh, that's interesting. Peak CAF isn't inside. Wonder what their licensing is. Now, I'm just using that as an example there of, you can see structures sometimes on the aerial photography when you're in country parks or near areas, near country parks, and kind of go, that's outside government land. Wonder what's going on there. The other good thing is you can then click on the lot and it will take you to the other website where you can actually buy the ownership records for the lots of land. You have to pay for each one when you download it, and it's another government website. And then the last kind of government website I want to talk about was the Statutory Planning Portal. Now, what's interesting in using this is you can start seeing what areas are zoned for certain uses. And particularly for us doing work on South Lantau, we have interest in what is agricultural land, what is village zones. This one's an interesting one, just from a perspective of the incinerator. They go in and they create certainly statutory planning areas, and you can see how now that the water has been zoned for this integrated waste management facility when where they're building the new incinerator. So that's another option for searching land records. Any questions at the moment, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question if you've got anything about those 4 or 5 different websites that I've just talked about. Or type a quick chat in the group chat. Nothing popping up there, that's all cool. Right, then the other fun thing is you start looking at, well, what's going on in terms of linking up research work, reports and that, and putting them into something that gives a geolocation to the photos or some way of referencing them out. So what I've got here is that you can imagine that there's lots of private reports. This one that I'm sampling, giving this example of here is something about the biodiversity on Lantau, put together by Clive Nofke and Philip Yip. Now imagine if in the publications we were tagging those to show that this bird or these buffalo are at this location at this time the photo was taken. So it's a little bit like taking the iNaturalist options and somehow having that as a hyperlink within reports, so you can kind of quickly see where it was and what it was, what else has been confirmed by that photo. And that's part of like, if, I don't know, there could be stuff going on in this area. So if you do know of cool ways that are going into reports for linking up to other databases, then let us know. And a lot of it, what I've been talking about now, has been kind of cameras, not so much videos, but still images. The other thing is, of course, people have so much drone footage these days, or photos and that. So I'm using the example here where Gary Stokes from Ocean Asia, using the drone, especially over the water, to get better shots of the pink dolphins and the porpoise, and also illegal fishing. And so what you can do with those drones is have repeated flight lines, or so people can take it out and like do a beach survey once a week at a certain time and fly it and build up a record of what's going on that beach or that forest or that type of thing. And of course, the other cool thing is it's just a different angle. Looking at things often helps. So don't know what happens with drone footage, or which is basically just video footage, how we can link in these videos and pull out static images and link them into other databases. And all of this kind of discussion came about from the idea that a lot of effort went into preparing focus group reports for preparing the Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, BSAP, for Hong Kong, which is basically coming up for its required review every 5 years. And this process of adding to the successes and what's been going on, how's the government going to actually report this, is all an interesting question, because at the moment, the Hong Kong government hasn't really indicated a way for the public to participate in saying, what have we achieved, what have we gained, and what have we also lost over the last 5 years, and what are we planning for the next 5 years? So these are all these different sites and information. I think there's some interesting citizen sciences and reporting that could really help speed up collecting data and showing what's going on, particularly in terms of helping projects that are done around EIAs for new development, where you might have a very scientific research as part of it, but you can also rank and take in the community's data quickly to help support other species that might be around at the time that the actual field observations for EIA reports or other reports are created. So that's kind of where a lot of my thinking's come about. That's pretty much where I've got to in joining up dots. So I'm opening up the floor now for anyone to kind of type a question or just turn on your microphone and share some ideas or thoughts about what you've heard so far.
That's all very cool. Thank you for sharing lots of good stuff on there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Fiona. Thanks. I also see, Alicia, you've just unmuted yourself, so feel free to, Fiona, you got a specific question first? And then we'll go to
No, just saying thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting reminder of what's possible if we can get some AI people, data miners and that involved in here. So more of the database tech type people as well. Alicia.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Alicia. I actually work at TrailWatch. So thank you, Merrin, for introducing the app. I only found out about your drinks yesterday, so I didn't join to tell you about TrailWatch or anything like that. But what I wanted to say is TrailWatch was set up to hike, and one of the things that we want to try and do more of is to enable more citizen science type of projects and activities. And so I think some of you here are probably citizen science enthusiasts. I think I saw the chat that some of you had participated in the City Nature Challenge.
Yep. And
if it's okay with you, I would love to be able to reach out to you and kind of get your input and see how we might, or I might get some of your feedback to see how we can make this app a bit more user-friendly for citizen science in the future. I do want to say, which is, Merrin pointed out 1823 earlier, which is that website. Actually, our app has a function called incident reporting. You can see it on the slide that Merrin has shown. And you can take pictures of, I don't know, like felled trees, waste dumping, illegal activities. And if you actually report it to us, we will find, I mean, if it's like a legitimate incident, then we actually raise it to the authorities to try and, I don't know, do something about it. So, yeah.
And in that section, Alicia, you also have, you know, what are the latest reports, and there's some stats in there. So guys, you can actually go onto the website and actually play with that and have a little look at that and kind of see what people are reporting. So there's some cool stuff in there. And I think the fun things is some of the ways that the photos can be categorized slightly differently as well to help us pull data out there. And some other search functionalities. Alicia, of course, after this, feel free to put a post in the Green Drinks Facebook group, which you've just also recently joined. And just for others, I believe, Alicia, only be a recent new joinee to the team of TrailWatch. So you're kind of coming in with fresh eyes as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Other questions or comments from anyone?
Hi there. Quick question on the TrailWatch incident report. Merrin, did you say that the incidents are, well, I guess the results of reporting the incidents, is that also reflected in the website? That's something that you can find out about from the website?
You mean the actions taken afterwards? Alicia, you better update me on that one. I'm not sure.
So depending on the incident, some of them take a long time to for the relevant department to fix. So it really kind of depends on what incident it is. But if you've raised something through us and it's something that we've taken action on, and let's say it's AFCD that is in charge of taking action, and they tell us that they've done something, then we will actually update that incident to say it's been complete. So you will actually see the result, but right now we're a small team, and so we're not like following up on everything every single day. That's not actually but you know, to answer your question, I think if you ultimately want to see if it's been complete or not, that's something that we do tell back to you.
As the person who reported it, is that what you mean?
Exactly, as the person who reported it. But actually the website, you can see the statistics of what's been reported and whether or not, how many have been complete as an action. So when we say it's been complete, it means it's been fixed or solved.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's great to know, thank you.
All right, other things, yeah, so Oh, how did I kill that? So yeah, that's a little sample just up on the screen of the different reported things. And, you know, so graffiti on marks, you know, waste being left around, so all good past that. So, and you know, shows you where it is, links off. I didn't choose a good one. Okay, other questions? Bertha's unmuted. Did you have a question there, Bertha, or you just joined and haven't muted? Anyone else? I'd love to know if anyone's got any other apps or websites that they think are cool in terms of tanking data that's from the community and is available to search or look at, both historical and current. Particularly in the marine environment, I think as well, because we often get stuck on the land stuff. Things like iNaturalist can actually record sounds if you don't see things as well. So that's the other one, but it also allows you to put in marine observations just as much as land observations. Everyone seems to be quiet, not seeing anything in the chat. And one of the other things that we're looking at doing after I talk to the sustainability group, some of you might know that the government does have a kind of an awareness raising around the BSAP process, and they have a kind of community events and that. We're looking at whether there's a better way of working with them to get more people actively reporting things, both good and bad, for our nature, and really kind of getting Hong Kong people who are out often with their phones and lots of photographers trying to, that you see with the butterfly groups or things like that, active in recording data up into essential databases. The ones like the City Nature Challenge is a project over the top of the iNaturalist. And so there are other projects that you can look at that are going on in Hong Kong, things like snakes being recorded within there, things like golf courses or school grounds, so that people can continue to look at the biodiversity that's there and just recording it in a place. And the cool thing with things like iNaturalist, if the identified species is on a red list for like the IUCN, then it automatically hides the location of that and blurs it so that people can't go directly to it. But of course, as you know, there might be times that we spot things that are totally new and they're not in or not in those lists. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I think we'll kind of wrap up. My interest in all of this comes from, and I'll just quite quickly share a little bit of my background where I got involved with ideas on how different groups can work together. And it all came out of some bird projects in New Zealand I was involved with. And this one's the one I particularly like, Kakapo Recovery Project. Because back in 1970, this flightless nocturnal parrot, they thought they might have only had 18 males, didn't know if they had any females. Then they discovered a bit of a population, 1990, and there was 49 of these parrots. And then I got involved in 2001, oops, sorry, scrolled too far, 2001 on a project where we went to help the nesting birds, and you were looking after the chicks in that. So actually in that little red box in that photo, there's 3 fertile eggs at a time when there was only a population in the world known of 87 of these birds. So it was pretty interesting to see the different ways that they got technology, businesses that were funding it and bringing along their corporate knowledge as well as staff to participate, conservation department and NGO. And we're now up to 211 of these birds in the world, which is pretty amazing growth considering they only breed every 3 to 5 years. So fun of parrots like that. So that's the main thing that I want to share with you guys. And at that point, no more questions. We'll thank everyone and I'll stop the recording at this point.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.